bridge that's, well, quite comfortable. In fact, there's actually more graffiti than bridge. But why? Why is this bridge graffitied more than any other in the area? And why are teenagers seemingly hanging out here every night? And doing what? What's the history of this local legend? How did it get this way? And most importantly, what does it all mean? What does this bridge mean to the community and to the teenagers that hang out here? Well, this is the story of Acid Bridge.
Everyone knew it had a story, but, no one really knew exactly what it was.
Now, with such an obscure landmark as Acid Bridge, where do you even begin finding the history? I mean, the actual name of the bridge is not Acid Bridge, so it's really hard to look stuff up. Well, luckily for me, the answer was on the bridge the whole time. And there's a sign on Acid Bridge, and it has, I think, about 6 lines of text, and I'll be going through each part of it, and that will build the foundation of the history. Now, I transcribed the 6 lines on the sign as such. Station 139, 452.5, Silver Creek, built 1970 by Madison County, Section 83B, MF.T, loading HS20. Now, I was able to distinguish what a few of them meant, most notably Silver Creek, because it's the creek that the bridge is over. And also, I think that one of the more significant ones is built in 1970 by Madison County. Now, Madison County is the area that's currently in, and it is the area that the bridge was built in. But of course, the most significant part is built 1970. We actually get the starting point of the history of this bridge. I think that now that we have this year, 1970, we can start here and go forward. We don't have to go past anymore. This is one of the first real pieces of data, and it's a year, and there's not a lot of specific dates on the events at Acid Bridge. And so this is one of the most significant ones right here. And of course, the only other line that I was able to deduce on my own was loading HS20, which, according to an engineering textbook, it actually is how you would classify a bridge on how much weight it can hold. And considering that Madison County was a coal mining town around 1970, I think that a bridge that was classified as HS20 would be able to support the vehicles that would carry the coal in and out of the area. So it is not that helpful, but it does give a lot of historical context, so I think that's pretty cool. Now, I was able to contact an engineer on the highway department in Madison County, Mr. Adam Walden, and he was able to help me figure out what the rest of the lines meant. Starting with station 139.452.5, I actually mistranscribed it, and it's supposed to be 139 plus 52.5. Now, that basically just tells you how long the bridge is. What it is the first 3 numbers, 139, that is just the first numbers, and then you multiply that by 100, and then you add the next numbers, so you get 13,952.5 feet long. That is how long Acid Bridge is. I do not care how long Acid Bridge is. The next thing that he was able to help me with was MF.T, which stands for motor fuel tax. Now, motor fuel tax is actually something pretty common in the area. Collinsville does it quite a bit, and it shows you how Acid Bridge was actually funded at the time. I think this is more historical context, and I think it's actually pretty interesting and pretty important that that's just how the bridge was funded. And of course, the most important part that he was able to help me with was Section 83B. I was able to find a bunch of different things online for them, but none of them really made sense. I mean, nothing had to do with a bridge or motor fuel taxes or anything. And luckily, Mr. Walden was able to tell me that that is actually the name of Acid Bridge on file. So that means that the real name of Acid Bridge is 83B. But I'm going to call it Acid Bridge because that is a lot more interesting. I'm sorry. Now, why is dissecting each part of this sign important? Well, you see, Acid Bridge is more than just a bridge. It's actually a local legend. That is an elevated status. It means that it is more than just a bridge. It actually means something a little bit more to this community. It has a story. Now, is that story true? Well, that's kind of why it's called a legend. I think that there's a general consensus among what that story is, but I thought I would ask some individuals on what they know about the story.
Rough overview, group of teenagers were driving down, I think at nighttime, obviously.
There were some kids in a car tripping on acid.
And then they flipped off the bridge.
And the car was like in the river that was beneath it. So, and it's kind of like, that story is more of the like common believable one.
I think that there is a lot of different opinions and the details of the story, but I think most people will agree with this, that there were teenagers who were tripping on acid and they drove their car over the bridge. That is the most basic, like, no details, but that is what most people agree on. So now that I have the bridge's name on file, you think it'd be a lot easier to find this police report, but it wasn't. In fact, I couldn't find anything on it. It seemed like I was going into dead end after dead end after dead end, and I feel like I was at the point of giving up, and then just out of nowhere, the biggest curveball imaginable hit me.
And then, like, when I started talking to, like, my girlfriend at the time about it, she said that that's not the real acid bridge. And the real acid bridge was the one actually, like, behind her house.
So what a generic movie plot twist that just happened during my research. There were two bridges all along. And East Kirsch Road Bridge was the bridge where the accident actually happened. That is why it is referred to as the real acid bridge. That is where the teenagers drove over the bridge while tripping on acid. And since I interviewed people who knew about the real acid bridge, I was actually able to find the location of it. And since I'm a really smart person, I decided to go to this incredibly sketchy and creepy place. And since I'm such a good friend, I also brought my friend Bobby along, because if I die, I won't die alone.
If you just go down that road forever, the road goes into the woods, and it's like an old abandoned road on old abandoned woods. And there are like dead deer on the side of the road. Like, it's just a really weird vibe. And like, you go down this road and in the summer, like, the flies are like terrible on this road. Horrible. Mosquitoes, terrible. You go down this road and just like emits bad vibes like the entire time.
Is it a dog?
Yeah, it's a little puppy.
Alright, let's just walk past it. Don't pet it or anything.
No.
Uh-oh. Hello. And then we parted ways with the puppy, and we never saw him again.
Aww.
Aww. Some trash bags, more bullet holes on the signs. Alright, so there's nothing like on this side, but this is like, I'm assuming this is like the way that people go to get here. Like that's the walk that you do. But this site has absolutely no information. So this is like what I think it is, right?
Yeah.
There's no graffiti. Alright. Oh, here's a date. 1983. No way I can read what that says. God, that's so weird to me. So why would that say 1983? Now, of course, that 1983 was incredibly confusing. It had nothing to do with anything. According to Bridge Hunter, the Kirsch Road Bridge was built in 1901 and it was destroyed in 2007. So why would the date 1983 even show up? It doesn't have anything to do with the Acid Bridge too, because that was built in 1970. So I emailed my bridge guy, Mr. Walden. Sorry for calling him my bridge guy, by the way. And he also said he didn't know. He gave his best guess, though, that that was the year that the concrete was poured there. And I think that that is probably the best explanation. Maybe the construction crew did it, or maybe some teenagers came over while the concrete was still solidifying and they just wrote the date. But it just doesn't make sense for why that date would be there, and I don't think I'm going to dig any further into that. And so, since I was able to find the actual bridge and I have second-hand witnesses, and the story even makes sense. Like, it makes so much more sense for the teenagers to crash on that bridge. I mean, look at the bridge. It's not there. Acid Bridge is there, and it is in great shape. Well, it's up. I mean, it may not look pretty, but there isn't a sign of a car crash. I know it was years ago, but still, you think there would be some sort of remnants of it. And now, I see a completely demolished bridge, and I just think that it's so much more likely for that to happen. So now, what does this all mean for the timeline? What does this mean for answering the question as to why Acid Bridge? Well, because Kirsch Road Bridge added so many complications to the original plan, I can no longer conclude this. I don't think that this accident is the reason why Acid Bridge is Acid Bridge. I mean, just think about it. It's not even on the same bridge. Why would this bridge become a local legend because of an accident that happened on another bridge? I think that with all of the information that I have at the time, I can make a pretty good conclusion as to why Acid Bridge.
For a lot of the kids, it's kind of just like a place that you know, it's like spooky. You want to go out there late at night. Kids will do drugs out there. People will dump stuff out there. That's kind of how it was on East Kirsch first, until those kids hit the bridge. So then they started calling it Acid Bridge, and now it's just on Lebanon Road because it kind of serves the same purpose, you know, connect you from Highway 4 to Trail Fallon.
So with teenagers using Kirsch Road Bridge as a hangout spot, and then having that destroyed by the accident, they had to migrate, essentially. And where else to migrate to than a bridge that's close by that connects the same roads? That's really why. And it's an underwhelming answer. There's no big accident that happened that made everyone want to go to this bridge and spray paint. It's just, our hangout spot was destroyed. We'll just do it over there then. But it doesn't prove. It's not one yields to the other. It's not a full-on proof. It's just, it makes sense. I mean, it's not 100% accurate. It might not even be 100% true, but it makes sense. And I think, for me, that's a good enough answer. So since the accident didn't physically happen on Acid Bridge, what does that really mean? Well, I think that transcends Acid Bridge to more of an idea. Acid Bridge is an energy, a spirit, if you will, and it is something that transcends the physical world, because the story isn't physically tied to the bridge. Now, that being said, what do we really lose if we were to lose Acid Bridge?
If we lost Acid Bridge, I don't think the culture would lose much.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be replaced immediately.
Honestly, I don't think it would make a difference if it was destroyed or kept. Obviously, we would lose a decent pathway to get across.
Well, besides the physical bridge.
Right.
It was probably my senior year, either 2017 or 18. They did go out there and they painted over all of the spray paint that was on there, so it was perfectly clean. And it maybe lasted for a day, and after a day, there were already kids out there spray painting over it again, so that didn't work.
Anytime my St. Louis friends will ask me, like, what is O'Fallon, Illinois like? I always end up mentioning Acid Bridge because, you know, it's so, like, I'll show them pictures of it, and they're like, this is so crappy. But I'm like, this is what we do on a Friday night at, like, 3 a.m. when we're supposed to be home. Like, this is what we do.
One big question that I wanted to answer is whether or not Acid Bridge is an eyesore or a work of art. And I know that it is not going to be one or the other. It might be somewhere in between, but I think that it definitely depends on what kind of person you are and what connection you have to the bridge.
I don't believe it's an eyesore. I just think it has a lot of character. I think it's really unique. Would I say it's a work of art? Definitely not. But I do think it's very interesting. I think it's got a lot of character to it.
I think it's a total work of art because although there isn't the best artwork on the bridge, it's very last minute graffiti. It totally speaks to the kids in O'Fallon. And yeah, I think it's a beautiful thing.
It is 100% an eyesore.
I mean, there's never one person that goes out there and buys enough paint to cover the entire bridge. So it's something that like requires a lot of people to just, I guess you could say, work together to create what Acid Bridge is.
It is a work of art, but it's not a individual work of art at all. And it's not something to be in. You know, I think it's not something to be in awe of. It's something to look at and say, like, wow, this area is being really affected by something. I think Acid Bridge is nothing more than a scream. You know, I think Acid Bridge is nothing more than a crying for help. And if you have a person that sees Acid Bridge as like, oh, this is stupid. Like, no, no, it's just like these kids literally just trying to evoke emotion in some way.
I personally think that Acid Bridge is a work of art. Although Acid Bridge is not a solo piece of art, nor is the entire thing intentional, but I think Acid Bridge is a mosaic. It is a modern-day mosaic made by a whole community and a whole faceless community. No one really knows each other. I don't know who put what graffiti where, but yet it all comes together to make the same thing. Now, in a mosaic, all of the little pieces come together to make one big image. However, I think that all of the graffitis on Acid Bridge come together to make a message. What is this message? Well, I think that Acid Bridge is one of the best modern-day representations of the phrase, one body, many parts. The bridge itself being the body, and each graffiti being a part. Now, I think that each part is completely and utterly unknown to each other. I mean, no one really knows who did what graffiti. You really only know which one you did. But that doesn't really matter because they all come together to make that same overall piece. And another thing that I think is incredibly interesting about the idea of the one body, many parts is that there are constantly new parts being added to this body. No two trips to Acid Bridge are always going to be the same because there's always a new piece of graffiti when you're there. I mean, when I was just taking pictures of the sign, you can see from here that when I took this first picture, it's completely different from what it looks like when I filmed there later. And although Acid Bridge does not promote the best behavior, nor is the graffiti appropriate, it's one of the only places where so many different people's art comes together and can live in harmony on one bridge.
If it's not Acid Bridge, we're just gonna we're gonna find a different space.